Hey guys, I recently competed in an Apex tournament here at Knox Esports. And after that tournament, I kind of realized maybe I could use some coaching. So I decided to get a one-on-one coaching session right here at Knox Esports. And I just want to tell you everything I learned.
So Sarah and I just sat down for a solid hour coaching, and these are the three biggest takeaways. So I asked Sarah, generally, what were the biggest three tips that you learned? And you said tip number one was good cover versus bad cover. What does that mean?
Yeah, I kind of always took it as even if I'm standing on the side of a building, that is still covered, just because I can just go to the left and still be behind the building. But I realized, that's kind of bad cover, whereas standing behind a box where I can duck down would be a much better option. I kind of always saw them as the same.
Yeah, and that also works in terms of taking height, right? And the importance of
Mhm.
taking height and maintaining pressure. Because I'm sure the reason why you're peeking outside the building is that you want to pretty much defend your spot, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And so the importance of even taking that height and backing up and keeping your hitbox as small as possible is overall the goal, correct?
Yes.
And so what would you tell somebody, because I'm pretty sure they would say, oh, but that seems like such a bronze level tip. What would be your response to that?
I mean, it's like I've heard a lot of stuff and I feel like I know a lot of stuff, but when I'm actually in the game and I'm just not thinking about all of those little details, I guess. And so I guess my response would just be that it's even though you hear it, you might not think to do it when you're in the actual fight.
Yes, so be sure to implement it. This tip number one, it
Yeah.
seems so basic, but for everybody watching, after we've covered a full hour of coaching, it doesn't matter if you're plat, masters. I've seen these same mistakes happen time and time again. And Sarah has really fantastic mechanics, but it doesn't mean anything if you don't have the proper cover. And the hard part about this, and we discussed this together, and you correct me if I'm wrong, when you feel that pressure and the momentum, I mean,
Mhm.
stuff like this goes out the window, right?
Oh, 100%. Especially for me personally. I feel like anything that I know, I'm just like kind of in a panic mode. So
Build that
it
steady
goes right out the
foundation.
window. Right.
So tip number two, you wrote this down, and so I'll have you explain it. Closing in on a fight. What does that mean?
So closing in on a fight, meaning maybe like you hear a fight happening a little bit further away from you, but maybe they have someone on height kind of watching. Um, so what we did and what I learned, and actually one of the biggest things that I'm the worst at is running through an open area just to get to the fight fast enough. I always felt like that was most important, but almost every time there's at least somebody looking my direction. I get beamed on the way in, something like that, or I can't even get shots on. So what we talked about was like in any given area of the map or any location, there's always a safe route to take with cover that's the most efficient and you can get some good shots off at the same time.
Yeah, so positioning, always have like a fallback plan, right? Because if you have that
Mhm.
fallback plan, what did we also talk about utility? I'm going to kind of add in a little utility, see if you remembered this tip as well.
Okay.
What did we mention
Um,
about utility, especially when you're working your way into a fight?
not to burn it, not to burn it to get to the fight, but save it more for like getting out of a situation or making the actual push.
Yeah, let's say, for example, you gave the best example. If somebody was on the roof and they blasted you and you said, okay, I'm behind cover now as I was working my way in. I can
Mhm.
use my Loba Q Vantage tactical to get out of this messy situation rather than getting to
Mhm.
that spot and then feeling like you are just stuck, right?
Right. Mhm.
And that's always the hard part is deciding how that happens, but then having that fallback. And I'm sure there's probably viewers asking, what do you do if, and I'm going to put you on the spot here, okay? What do
Okay,
you do if
okay.
you're running out and there is no option to cover? What do you do?
Um, if there's no option for cover, I guess you just take the fight. You try to remember your recoil patterns and your
Close.
strafing.
I like it. I like it. Okay, so because everyone VOD reviews, okay, I didn't mean to put you on the spot,
Right.
but I think it's a
No,
good
you're
teaching
good, you're
moment
good.
because when we
Yeah.
think about it, putting yourself on the spot with that, it's like, okay, if you VOD review, it's like, well, we couldn't have done anything. There's no way we could avoid that fight. this is where you start to think, well, why did we end up in that bad position to begin with? Why do we put ourselves in a scenario where we had to traverse an open field? At some point, you would have to have known that the zone was going to pull from that angle, right? Let's say if you were looking at Rift, an open map, right? And say, well, why would we want to cross an open field? Why not just be there up sooner and then fight for that positioning? I know it may seem like when you're closing in a fight that you're kind of dummy aping. And I know everyone in the comment section will always say, oh, I'm just going to push everything. Or like, there just seems like they're pushing without thinking. There's logic behind what they're fighting for. And I always encourage the word, fight for what's yours. You know, don't be nice to other people in the lobby. A lot of people watching, and then Sarah, from what I've learned from you, is that you're probably way too nice to the opponent. It's like, oh yeah, they can have that spot, and you know, it's okay. You know,
Yeah, that's true.
you know, the other one, like this will happen. Let's say there's 13 people in the end zone, and say let's just coexist. But the problem is that people will say let's coexist when there's nobody nearby. It's like we ain't coexisting yet. That shouldn't happen.
Right.
And so the tip number 3, let's segue because you mentioned it, which I think was a good note. And for every controller player who's struggling with recoil and trying to improve their aim. Number 3, you said controller player fighting at a distance. What did that mean? What did you learn from that?
Yeah, so I learned that like it's more important to think about the recoil of the gun that you're using rather than trying to specifically track your opponent. Because the more you're able to control that recoil, you're just shooting more of a beam and they're just gonna strafe into it, or I don't know, I just did a lot more damage when I paid more attention to that rather than just trying to follow my opponent's movement.
Now, part 2 to this. If somebody is running in a straight line, what mechanic did you learn about when somebody was running in a straight line?
Oh, recoil smoothing.
Yes. And so what's the beauty behind recoil smoothing?
It kind of controls the recoil for you when you're moving left and right, when you're moving your stick left and right.
Yeah, and so that broader movement will make the recoil seem less. And so last question, what was another fact that you learned about light versus heavy weapons in terms of recoil?
Oh, well, I can't remember which one was which, but I think heavy goes up and to the right, and then light goes up and to the left.
Reverse that. So yes,
Okay,
close.
got it.
So the biggest tip that most control players remember that recoil patterns are always the same. And that whenever they pull a certain direction, they're always going to pull that direction. And if you struggle with recoil at a distance, just remember that first part of the pattern. And I promise you, even Sarah was already beaming me much more efficiently at a distance. And it was great. It was just noticeable right away.
Yeah.
So any last tips for anybody watching, or even shout out your socials? Why not?
No tips from me. Tips would be go to the firing range.
That's a good tip. Listen, that's a good one.
I never do. But I think I'm going to now. And my Twitch is Sarah Ben 10.
Awesome. Well, all of you guys, we met actually at Knox Esports. Sarah was actually a part of a tournament at Knox Esports, and we sat down, we did some coaching regardless of the results of how you performed. And it doesn't even matter how you perform because you're taking a step forward, and I guarantee you now that you have more knowledge about Apex, about some honest tips and how to improve, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So if you guys are curious, leave a comment and don't forget to subscribe. And if you're interested in the venue or interested in some free coaching, let us know in the comment section down below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you guys all in the next one.